Loving God, thank you for all the wonders of your creation. Thank you that you gave Jesus so that we might enjoy it and look after it and share it better with you and with each other. May my words this evening and the thoughts of all of our hearts help to make that more so. Amen.
Amen.
As many of you probably know by now, I'm a gardener. Not a professional one anymore, but I've been an enthusiastic gardener ever since I was old enough to hold a trowel. I was given my first little bit of garden when I was about 4, and apparently I covered it with nasturtiums from one end to the other, but there you go. Not to mention, I grew up in farming country. So when I was younger, I was really puzzled by this talk in the reading of seeds falling into the ground and dying. I thought, this Jesus, he might have been a good carpenter, but he couldn't have been much of a farmer if he thinks the wheat dies in the ground. He comes to life. But as I look deeper into the reading, I realised that that's exactly what he's saying. Because it would have seemed obvious to the disciples too, that a grain in the earth springs up into a living plant. That's what seeds do, that's what they're for. It's common sense. But isn't it also common sense that when your leader is humiliated and executed and buried, it's over, and he's dead, and he's gone, and he won't be coming back? Isn't it common sense that the dead stay dead, and that without their Messiah, the new kingdom wasn't going to be coming? Consider, okay, just one, a seed. It's a tiny thing, probably wouldn't actually be able to see it unless you're standing right next to me staring at my fingers. But it's full of massive potential. In this seed is everything that's needed to grow this plant. There's a miniature embryo plant in here, and everything that it will need to make its first ventures out into the world, the food, and a tough shell around it that keeps it safe. And it can stay there, alive, holding on to all that potential for as long as it stays safe and dry in its packet. They can last for years, in some cases centuries. Wheat grains are incredible survivors. For year after year of drought, they can bide their time if they have to. But while they stay safe, in a packet or a box, they will never grow into a plant. The seed remains a single seed. But think now, if I put it into the earth, things begin to happen to it. There's cold and heat, there's water seeping in, softening that hard shell, making enzymes move, waking it up. There are fungi and bacteria and insects and birds vital to its future life cycle, but right now, just a danger to a little seed alone in the dark. And then as the seed swells, the shell cracks, tiny white rootlet and a tiny green shoot make their way into this dark world, and the seed leaves find their first daylight, and wind and rain, and there are all sorts of things out there wanting to make a meal out of a tiny little seedling. It's a dangerous world for young plants to grow, spread, flower, and finally have harvest of their own and seeds of their own, sharing its potential, bringing about new life. A grown plant is a beautiful thing, a source of food, a source of oxygen, of colour, of life, of beauty. But unless it risks being broken open, it will never be more than a seed. I'm a plant geek. I think you're probably getting that by now. I love every aspect of plants, and one of my favourite things is when I've ordered seeds from a supplier And this bulky parcel arrives in the post, usually January or February, and I pull out all the little packets and look at the bright pictures of all the things that they'll one day grow into, some sweet peas and some cucumbers and all sorts. And I read the descriptions, you know, of the sowing times and the harvest times and the kinds of soil they prefer, and I lay them out. These ones to go in March, these ones to go in April, these ones straight into the soil, these into pots first. It's really exciting to see all that potential and imagine everything they could become in the garden. How beautiful it's going to look, how fruitful it's going to be. Then things get real. Then they get into the soil, things happen. Some won't grow. I might never know why. Some of the seeds just might never germinate. There will be caterpillars, late frosts, slugs, diseases, cats using my seedbed as a litter tray. But if I never put them in the ground at all, they will never be more than a little row of packets. The trouble is, much of our culture is against taking risks. It likes small, safe, guaranteed outcomes from acceptable and predictable choices. And if we must take risks, then we should always have insurance, a backup for when things go wrong. But Jesus had no backup, and there was no insurance. There was no dramatic rescue from the cross. The fear, the pain, the humiliation, the loneliness, the only way out was through. To keep going, to keep trusting as he faced the crowds outside Pilate's compound, the cuts of the whip, the soldiers forcing the crown of thorns onto his head as he stumbled under the cross, to keep faith, to keep forgiving as he was nailed to the wood, as bystanders shouted ridicule at him as he heard his mother crying, to keep loving, to keep hoping, as he closed his eyes and headed into the shadow of death, so that we would never have to go there alone. Because if he hadn't, there would never have been a church. If he had not, we would never have been Christ's body filled with the Spirit. Christ's body would have remained one single body, one seed, an incredible, wonderful body full of the infinite potential of God, but one in first century Palestine. But now see how big Christ's body is. All over the world, so many languages and races and creeds and all different kinds of people. Christ's body has borne such a harvest because he was not afraid to be the seed who went into the ground first. And each of us is also a seed, full of potential. And like seeds, it isn't in the quiet and the safe times that we grow. Oh, we need times, safe rest and recovery at times, but when we're in them, we can look back and see how, even if it didn't seem so at the time, we grew in the difficult times. We have gifts, we have potential that can only bear a harvest if we put them out there into the world. If we take a risk, go through the fear, go through the hard work, the uncertainty. I can promise that if you never speak to anyone about your journey, your experiences, your faith, your struggles, whatever, then you won't be rejected or ridiculed for doing so. But you won't touch hearts and lives with those stories either. If you never try out your gifts, be it singing or speaking or cooking for people or art or welcoming people or organising skills or anything else, if you never try, then your efforts will never be rejected. You'll never mess them up, you won't look silly, but you won't get better. You won't learn new skills, you won't touch people's lives with them. trust me, about 13 years ago, when I gave my very, very first sermon, I didn't exactly bring the room to its feet. The best you can say is nobody walked out. But I stuttered and I stumbled and I repeated myself and I lost my place and I went absolutely red as a beetroot. And I'll be honest, I'm still afraid of making a mess of it today. But if I never spoke, I'd never give any message at all. And if we never open our hearts to people, people in need, people in despair, angry people, frightened people, to love them with Jesus' love, then we won't be let down, we won't be taken advantage of, we won't be disappointed, but we won't be Christ's hands and feet either. We won't be light in the shadows, we won't be the builders of a new, better way that Jesus showed us. Yes, love is risky. Generosity is risky. Forgiveness, faith are risky. When you want to follow Jesus, you have to take the risk. You've got to do what Jesus did. Offer up your gifts, your heart. Take a deep breath. Step into the shadows of uncertainty and trust.